Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome again to a wonderful workshop we're going to have today. Our speaker, Abraham Ruiz, is ready to share with us this very interesting topic. On behalf of Grupo SM and University of Dayton Publishing, we welcome you to another very interesting workshop, Early Literacy. I'm going to read Abraham's bio so we all can have information about who he is and his expertise on the field. Abraham Ruiz is a teacher with more than 10 years of experience. He is a co-founder of Programa de Idiomas, a language school in Sayula, Jalisco, Mexico, that also creates online courses. Abraham has worked as a language consultant for the British Council, Certeca, Dayton University Publishing at Grupo SM, training public and private teachers all around the country. He worked for the University of Guadalajara as an instructional designer for the virtual campus. Abraham is also working at Secretaría de Educación Pública as an English teacher in a public secondary school. He holds a BA in a financial management and a BA in teaching English as a foreign language. And currently he's studying a master's degree in learning technologies at the University of Guadalajara campus Ciudad Guzmán. He's working on a research project on the evaluation of use of mobile devices as a tool in a public secondary school. Abraham, it's an honor and a pleasure to have you today with us. So anytime you're ready to share with us your presentation, we're just ready to listen. Thank you again and enjoy.
Thank you, Abdel. Hi, guys. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. So let me start sharing my presentation. Everybody can see it?
Yes, we can see it, Abraham. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, let's begin with our topic, which is early literacy. Okay, so let me start with the main goals that we're going to see today throughout this webinar. The first one is the importance of early literacy, the 5 predictors of early literacy, supporting oral language development, and 4 predictors of reading language success, and finally, literacy instructions in early childhood education. In each part of these topics, we're gonna have like a break so you can ask questions while I'm presenting. You can ask questions during the chat. So please be free to share your ideas or your experience in the field, right? Okay, so let's begin with this quote, or the quote of the day, which is the goal of early childhood education should be to activate the child's own natural desire to learn. So what's your opinion about it, right? So this quote is from the Professor Maria Montessori, which I think we are all familiar with her work. Sorry. Right? So what's your opinion about it, right? Let me check. Hold on. See if I can see. Well, let's see if people is waking up, right? So, good afternoon, Maria. So, what's your opinion about this quote of the goal of early childhood education should be to activate the child's own natural desire to learn? Do you have any ideas? What's your opinion about it? Let's see.
We're just waiting for some comments to
or
get
some
through.
comments, right? So let's continue. So if you have like any comments, I will read them later on, right? So the idea of this webinar is not like having all the answers, but to have more questions about it, right? So you will see like many theses and many. What I did was an abstract of several works from different universities and different publishing houses, so we can like have an idea of what is this topic about, right? Okay, so let me read first one, this quote from Professor James Dale. So you will see it at the end of the presentation. Who is he, right? So he says like literacy is such an important skill to have and develop because it is used in every facet of a person's life. Early childhood educators are given the responsibility of fostering those necessary skills to set the stage for learning in the later grades as well as the rest of their students' lives. Sorry. You will see that this is such an important issue that we have in our hands. No matter if you're like an English teacher or you're like Spanish teacher, uh, all the work that we have with our students has a reflect on their life, not only in their academic life, but also in their private lives, right? Also, those skills you will see, and we all know that they are like really, really important for them. Like, how can I, like, a few days ago, an assessee was presenting 20th century first skills, and it was like something that she said that she had like problems with chemistry. And what was the problem with chemistry? Probably that she couldn't understand all the information that it was given for the subject. So we have to take into consideration all of these stuffs, right? Sometimes we have students that they have trouble with math, physics, chemistry, history, and sometimes it's because they don't understand. They don't have like they couldn't understand what is the meaning of the instructions, or they couldn't understand what is the purpose of the information that they're giving, right? So let's continue.
Abraham, before you continue, we have several comments on the chat box. Maybe you want to read. They're pretty interesting, and thanks everyone for your participation. We really expect you to participate on this workshop.
Very good. Thank you, Adel. Yes, Anonymous says, it's true, but nowadays it's difficult that students decide to learn. Most of them, they do it because they have to. Totally agree, right? I mean, now that I have experience like working with teachers all around the country, sometimes you think that, for example, I'm talking about the subject, English subject. So you think that the students in the frontier, right, especially because, let me be clear, as Mexico, we share a border with the United States, we believe that people that they live in the frontiers, or for example in Cancun, in another place like that, they have no problems with the subject, but they have another problems. Probably they don't have problems with the level of the students, but probably they have another kind of problems, right? But yes, I agree with you. Kelia says the use of realia and also games using that theory. Yes, absolutely. We're going to see it later. And we're challenging to activate this desire in childhood to learn even from early ages. Totally agree with you, Marcelo. Child's loves to discover is natural in humans. AH, yes. Hale says, I agree with her because the children are curious by nature, and it's our job to guide them and help them in the process. I totally agree. Maria, yes, we're not only teachers, right? We're just like, we're their parents, psychologists, their friends. I mean, we have to be more than just a teacher, right? Very good. Selene from Guadalajara, close from here. It is better that children have the initiative to learn, and it is our duty as educators to awaken it. Perfectly, totally agree with you, Selene. It is the same as emergent literacy. We will see it. It's quite a little bit different, but we're going to see it later on. Parents should be the first educators. Yes, we're going to have like that reflection at the end. That in this area of education is like a play, right? So you have the audience, you have the actors, you have the stage. So everything counts, right? This is exactly as education. I mean, if teachers are not participating, we have problems. If the administration of the school is not cooperating, we have a problem. If the government in charge of education is not working enough, also we have a problem. If parents is not working with us, we have always have a problem, right? Very good. Let's continue, right? So, so we're gonna start with the 5 predictors, okay? So this was taken from the Eastern Connecticut University. So they have like a huge department who's studying this area. So they said like they have like predictors, right? These predictors, we're gonna see it like oral language, phonemic awareness, alphabet awareness, concepts about writing, and early writing with inventive spelling. We're gonna see it deeply in like. Okay, so let me start with oral language. So oral language is the foundation between reading and writing, right? So what's your opinion on it, right? So if you have any comments, please put it in the chat and we can comment at the end, right? So they said oral language is the foundation between reading and writing. I mean, they are connected. I mean, oral language is not a topic apart from writing and reading. And they say there is a scientific proof of a relationship between vocabulary and a reading comprehension. And we're going to see it like a little bit deeper in the next slides. And then we have phonemic awareness. What is phonemic awareness? This is the ability to hear, identify, and manipulate sounds or phonemes in a language. It is an ear-like skill. As a result, children using phonemic awareness are able to hear and identify how sounds are the same or how they are similar. So, as a teacher consultant, when I'm like traveling and working with professors, I see that some of the teachers like phonemes. Oh God, no, please, I don't want to talk about it, right? But as soon as they understand the importance of the phonemic, and not only for us as a teachers, but for them, I mean for our students, right? If they see the importance of how can I pronounce this word, how can I pronounce this letter, what happened when for example, when we have some variants in the British English or in the American way. So what happened when you mix another word and then you have a different sound, right? So as soon as your students like identify those sounds, you will see that these patterns are really, really rich, right? We're gonna see it deeper in the next slides. The next one is alphabet awareness, right? This is not only about children awareness of letters, the sound of letters, or the sound of the letters, right? Moreover, it is extremely significant to remember that children understand the purpose of those letters. What are those symbols? How do I use them? I mean, what is the purpose of like ABC? I mean, what happened with for example, the vowels? The alphabet has like a different pronunciation, and when I'm reading, suddenly the A it's or it's oh. So sometimes we have like, oh my God, right? So they have to understand that, right? How do I use them? And remember, like we have to time that you have like chance to working with your students, uh, this university says you have to take into consideration all the moments, and they call it teachable moments. For example, you're reading something, and then you identify like some of your students are struggling with the pronunciation of something, and then you can take, I'm not saying like the whole class, but you can take like 5, 7 minutes to explain and maybe giving some examples. Because remember, like, especially because we're talking about children, I mean, children really follow you, right? They listen to you and they try to copy the same way that you're doing. I mean, trying to listen and then trying to imitate the way you pronounce it, right? We're going to see it in the next slides. Then we have the concepts about print, right? Ensure students understand how relevant is the print and how can learners see it through the classrooms. And what about concepts about printing? Okay, this is about label everything and constantly inundated with words, letters, and sounds. Let me tell you my experience. For example, like 20 years ago, it was a long time ago, I was studying Japanese, and it was a like small school here in Guadalajara. And I remember that they have these name tags in all of parts of the school. I mean, when you were washing your hands, I mean, on the faucets, you can see the name on your on the switch of the light, on the TV. I mean, even the chairs. I mean, the whole school they have the name tags. So the idea is that in the more interaction that you have with the language, it will be like more common for you, right? And this was for a school for adults. Now imagine this one for children. Last time I was in La Paz giving a course, and I remember there was a elementary teacher, and she had a beautiful classroom, and she had name tags all over the class. I mean, all over the classroom, and you can see like the students really feel comfortable. And when they have like, teacher, can I use and if they couldn't remember the name of that part, just with the name tag, oof, they have it, right, with the labels. Also expand children's print, right? So for example, teachers need to be deeply careful or explicit in the read aloud practice. For example, when you're mentioned about expand children's print, it means like let them put the name tags on the classroom walls, right? Like they feel like this is for them, they belong to that place, right? And teachers need to be deeply careful and explicit in the read aloud practice. For example, you're reading a book. While you're reading a book, you have to explain, for example, the elements of the book, right? Okay, we're gonna read this book, and the title is, and the author is. Okay, now let's begin with, so they will understand that, okay, this is a book, and this is the title, I mean, the name of the text, and the author is who? The one who wrote it, or who, right? So that's the idea. Now, the next one is early writing with inventive spelling. So teachers need to create strategies to develop children's understanding of the purpose of writing, right? So the idea here is that we have to pay attention to explain everything, right? Like, how can I create a strategy? Because everything is related, right, with the purpose of writing. So, for example, your students, they have a task. So tomorrow they have to bring their toys, right? And they have to play with the toys. So probably you can sit with your students and start describing what they are doing while they're playing. Okay, okay. Now you're gonna create this. So, or for example, they're gonna make puppets out of pieces of paper, materials. So while you're describing everything, so that's the purpose of writing, right? I mean, create strategies to foster our students. Okay, I'm going to continue. Sorry. In a moment, I can read your questions. Hold on. Okay, so this is time for answering questions. So,
Abraham, one of the very
yes.
important questions we had at the beginning is the definition of literacy. I understood you talk about the predictors, but can you give us a very short definition of literacy?
Sure. Literacy means it's working with all of the skills. I mean, it's literacy. It means like the ability to understand through all of the skills any information that you have. For example, while you're speaking with someone, you could understand what they say, the instructions, the information they say to you. Literacy is also about reading. When I have information on my hands about any text, can I understand the meaning of the information? What is the purpose? What is the information? What do they say about it, right? Also about writing. I mean, all the elements of writing. Can I write information? Can I be an independent writing, or in what stage am I? Right? That's the idea of literacy. Any other? Yes, Christina, I agree with you. For example, it says to make them read in English even harder. Yes, but the idea is that you have like you take steps, right? For example, um, the other day, for example, my children in their kindergarten, at that stage, they don't know how to read, obviously, but they can make drawings or doodlings about it, right? So, like for example, I was reading the teacher was reading the the story, and children have to like draw all the who was the main character. Was Juanito, and they have to make the draw of Juanito. Okay, he was playing in the park, so they have like creating drawings about the park. So that's the idea of writing. I mean, even in that early stage, even it's not like formal writing, it's their writing also, right? Yes, Katia says, I agree that oral language is the base. It's how they begin to learn language and how they associate when they begin to read and write. Diana says, I agree. Phonemic is the basic of for reading. Yes, right. Let's be honest. I remember when I was in the university, I took 2 semesters of phonetics and phonology, and I remember myself and all of my classmates, we were struggling with phonetics and phonology. But as soon as you understand like when you put it in action into a class, it's a whole different story. It's easy for them, the American one, or all the TV and music examples. Yes, especially, well, I don't know if someone is here from Spain, but obviously, as we have the United States here in Latin America as a reference, yes, it's easier for us. TV, songs, everything, right? Yes. Phonics are part of this competence. Kelia says oral is the result of both. Yes. Katia says, I think my students are definitely having a hard time with alphabet awareness. I try to use fun videos to have an oral example of the different ways the letter sounds. Yes. Very good. Okay. So let's continue. Let me check if I have a friend who is a doctor and make a compilation about how the mind doesn't work and understand information that if it's simply on the screen, that is the best to study on a paper. Yes, but I have my thoughts about it. Like I told you, like, well, Abel, when he presented me, I'm studying learning technologies. So nowadays, like for us, reading on paper is the base. But now for children, especially this generation, like the ones that are like in kindergarten to secondary, I mean, they have a different whole story. I mean, they don't read, but they are using another skills, and that doesn't mean that they're not learning or they are not reading. but they are acquiring information through another from another areas, right? For example, children of today, for example, my children, I mean, even if we have like a smart TV and they have a control, they prefer to watch their YouTube Kids through my smartphone or the iPad. So, I mean, I said, come on, you have the TV. I mean, it's bigger. You can relax while you're like drinking your milk, but they prefer the smartphone. So because they feel like, or the iPad, because they need the interaction. So with the TV, they're just watching. So for us, remember, as my generation, because I'm a member of the X generation, uh, we were like passive, right? Like receiving everything. So for us, the TV was like the the new one. I mean, the new approach besides the books. Now with the this generation, I mean, now the cell phones and the iPads, it's for them like easier, so they can interact in a different way. Carmencita says, I don't teach my students letters names. I only use the sounds each letter it makes. Is that okay? Yes. For example, I was checking, for example, now in kindergarten, for example, in like in Spanish, when I was in kindergarten, I think I remember I was like A, A, B, C, D, etc. Right? But now they're like making the sounds. No, okay, this is not P. This is P, P, right? This is B, B, right? And then there's an okay, bueno, right? This is like papa, mama, right? So they're like starting to teach vocabulary or the alphabet in a different way. How can I apply literacy with preschoolers? We're gonna see it in a moment. Okay, let's continue. So supporting oral language development in a rich language environment. Is that right? So oral language is the foundation of literacy, as we mentioned before, right? That's why we have like, and apart from this presentation, and in supporting oral language, we have three topics that we're gonna see: semantics, syntax, and again, a beautiful phonology, right? For example, semantics. Hold on. Sorry. It says, use words that have a connection and a meaning for the children. It is a fact that if students recognize those words when they see them, they will have an easier time to read it, right? So that's the idea. Like when you're reading to them, to your students, especially children. So the best way is like introduce vocabulary through the readings. Also, try to use words that have a connection and meaning for the children. For example, if you're reading, I have this class and they have to understand and follow instructions. So I have problems because children. I mean, uh, the attention span is like really short. So what I was thinking, like, what is the topic that they always talk about? Video games, right? And then I started talking about Free Fire and what is the other one? I forgot the name of the video game, right? But I started to introduce instructions through video games. So all of the students, because the majority were like boys, they were like, "Whoa, right? I mean, do you play the Free Fighter?" Oh yes, of course. Like, and they were like, when they were like reading the instructions of the game, I mean, it was like they have a connection. I mean, I didn't have to worry about the explanation. I mean, they figure it alone, right? They like because they're interested. They have a connection. That means that's the main topic of semantics. Not only the meaning of the word, but what is the connection of this word with me, right? What does so when we're talking about a topic, so try to think like what is the main approach for them, right? That is related for them, and you will see that's a whole different story. And then you have syntax, right? So it says, when students learn new words, they need to know how to use them in order to make sense. Like I told you before, we have words, but how can I make an order? How can I make sense? I mean, what is this word for me, right? It is common for learners to make structural approximations, right? Like they try to like creating like a structure. So we're gonna work on that. And then teachers need to recognize how children put words together into making sentences, right? This is not like, okay, this is the subject and you have the noun and you have the verb. No, 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 right? I mean, while you're reading, while you're like explaining, they will see the patterns, right? And they will recognize, okay, so first is here and then I have here. They will figure it by themselves. And also, especially teachers are modeling back without correction, right? As soon as they're like giving you words or phrases in English, don't try to correct them, right? Let them make mistakes. However, when you reply to them, you reply with the correct way, right? Without making point on the mistake. So they will understand later on. You will see that, oh, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, right? Especially with children from like the third, fourth year of elementary school. This is the time where students like understand more about their own mistakes. And then expected errors and guide them that mistakes is something natural, right? So they say that, for example, we have to expect errors. And I remember that's when I remember and I found this image that I brought you from Pinterest, which says mistakes are expected, respected, inspected, and corrected. So this is something natural. I mean, they have to understand that mistakes are common. I mean, they're like natural part of life. We have to respect also the mistakes, right? We don't have to like, we have to create a safe environment so everybody understands that it's okay. We all commit mistakes, but we also have to inspect why. I mean, analyze the mistakes. What happened? Are they fossilizing errors or what? Right, right. And at the end, we have to correct. I mean, we have to uh, improve in our speaking. There we go. So let's continue. And then lastly, phonology, we saw it before. So says phonology relates to the sound system or phonemes of a language. Children always listen and they are learning how to articulate the sounds they hear, right? Identify the sounds they have a problem with. And when students are aware of phonology and sounds, now they can connect by encoding in writing or decoding what they are reading, right? So like the one teacher says, how can I do it with my students? Like, for example, you can start with like Dr. Seuss or any other materials that we have in SM, right? Or here in Dayton. We have tons of materials and stories for kids that they focus on pronunciation of words, right? So probably you can start with that and also try to have like a little research, like what is the problem with my students? Or what is the problem in my students in this class? Because sometimes, for example, if you're an English teacher and you have to teach 3, 4, 5, or in my case, like I have 8 different classes, so I have to recognize which ones are, what are the problems that each one of the classes have with certain parts of the pronunciation, right? And also like make them aware that we have a pronunciation there, right? That it is different from Spanish. And I always try to like make them aware, like how do we pronounce the alphabet, for example, in Spanish, and how can we use it in English? What is the differences? And they only recognize by songs or games, or you can create many other activities. Any questions so far? Hold on.
Abraham, there is a question
Yes.
that I think is right of you, Ali, because it says, I need to teach grammar online, but can't do videos? How can I do it? Maybe a little bit related to the topic. I don't know you want to answer it now or maybe at the end of the presentation.
Okay, can you repeat the question, please, Abel?
I need to teach grammar online, but I had to use videos. How can I do it? Or I can't use videos. How can I use videos to teach grammar?
Well, one is YouTube. You can use, well, depends on your students. If you're talking about adults, you have tons of videos on YouTube. If you're looking for special videos for children, I suggest you to use YouTube Kids. There are tons of videos. I mean, you have no idea how many videos we have on YouTube, right? I mean, there are tons of videos. So like, try to like Google it, search it on YouTube. Try to use well, I will put it at the end. Try to use Boolean parameters so you can filter all the information that you can find in YouTube, right? Also, you can use YouTube education. I mean, some teachers and most students, they don't know that we have YouTube education, and YouTube education we have tons of videos also related to education, so you can find tons of information there. Also, I suggest you, don't be afraid, create your own videos. I mean, at the beginning, believe me, my videos at the beginning were like the worst of the world, but I'm not saying that today's my videos of today are like amazing, but I try to like eliminate those mistakes. Also, for example, I recommend you to try to like ask your students about their favorite YouTubers, right? So you will see what kind of information they are like looking for or they like, and also you can create something like a video with that kind of like environment of that. For example, one of my students follow that, and my son does it. It's like Tetocho Morocho or something like that. I don't remember the name of that YouTuber, right? But you can see the kind of videos that the students at that age like, right? Like interesting topics, different ideas about the world and exploring. So try to like, one, Google it, right, on YouTube. Second one, look for, I mean, on specialized places like I said, YouTube education. And then the last one, ask your students what kind of information do you like on YouTube, and you will see, you will receive a lot of information from them. Any other?
Yes, that is a question related about how can we use phonology in an online classes. I think online classes right now are very important because the situation
Yes.
we are living. So what about phonology on online format?
Yes, phonology and online formats. Well, it's a little bit more complicated because you need like a face-to-face. In this case, I will suggest you also like creating, for example, maybe tasks. I will suggest you to, if you're looking now, like this is for all of you that not all, we're frustrated, but for the ones that are frustrated because I mean, moving from face to face to online, especially in these times of pandemic, and we don't know yet when are we going back to our schools. I suggest you to look for task-based learning. So when you understand the foundings of task-based learning, you will see how can you structure a class online, and you will see that it's really easy. So that the idea is only like scaffolding all the information, like in steps. So you start like giving like instructions, and as soon as they finish these tasks, because kids they love games, right? Someone says before in the chat, right? They like gaming and the TPR. So the idea is like on task-based learning. This is a methodology from the 1960s, 70s. But nowadays with the online, I mean, I think it's now the foundation of the online teaching. So I suggest you to look for the task-based learning, TBL. So you will see how can you structure the tasks and then put it on online. How can you use it? For example, you can write questions and then they watch a video, and then after they watch a video, they have to answer or they have to complete this. Or for example, you have a face-to-face session like we have today, and then when you're doing this, for example, you can send them worksheets. I know it's kind of like difficult, but with the help of our help of their parents, it's easier. So you send them the worksheets. So while you're reading, they have to like completing some tasks, right? Like, okay, I'm going to read this story, and you have to identify all the all the when I mentioned, right? As soon as you have it, or you have to circle the one that there are like and you have to underline all the right, all the sound right, and you make them examples, and then they have to like follow them. I mean, it's not difficult, but you have to be online teaching. It's about be creative, super creative, right? Especially because we don't have the students like in a physical place. Any other?
I think we have time for the last one, and
Yes.
also we have a request. Let me see. Soraya says if it's possible for you to show again the slide about mistakes. She says
Sure.
it's really good. And the question, the last question we have time for this part, it says, how can I catch children's attention for reading instead of using translation? How can I catch children's attention for reading instead of translating or using translation?
Using translation. Oof. Yeah, it happens to me when I was like starting. Yes. How can you use it? Like I just mentioned, right? Like try to use, for example, if the information that you have from the books that you're using, you see that they have no connection with your students, find another information, right? Or create your own personal material, right? So if you create your own personal material, design for your students, I mean, it will be very helpful, right? Also, think about the timing of the activities. I mean, that's why working with children is really exhaustive because all the activities have to be like very fast. I mean, you have to move one here and then another one, and then you jump, and then you go out of the classroom, and then you go in, and I mean, you have to be like. I remember my colleagues when I was studying in the university, the ones that teach French because they have like French, they have the style, and we were like gaming and using fly swatters. And for example, I was like one time I designed like a fishing rod, so they have to pick the like fishes, fish, sorry, but they were like glasses. So I painted the cups, and they were like kind of like fish on the sea. So I create materials, and they were like, they love it, right? When they're playing with the materials. So I remember my colleagues from the French language, they were like, why are you so clown? And I said, no, I mean, I'm not a clown, right? I mean, I try to give them, my students, like a time to enjoy, right? And time to play. Because if everything is like all respected and all serious, I mean, especially children, they get bored, right? There is any other? Adele?
Yeah,
No?
there are several questions, but I don't know. You prefer to leave them at the end,
Yes,
so
at
we
the
can
end,
continue. Okay.
if we can have time. Okay. So then, because I mean, I still have like two on other topics. So first is 4 predictors of reading language success. So we have expressive language, receptive language, listening comprehension, and unusual vocabulary, which means rare words, right? So how can we work with this, right? So, for example, expressive language has to do with how well children use language to express their wants and needs, right? So we have to be very creative in order to help our students to engage them, right? I know like they always based on the L1, right, on their modern tongue. So they always try to speak Spanish, for example, for us. So this is our problem, right? So they want to speak Spanish all the time. So the idea is like, okay, as soon as they start like, oh, so you like this one? No, teacher, pero es que yo quiero. Quiero? What is quiero? Oh, I want. So like the idea is like try to elicit it, right? Like not to be like hard. Because I remember like I have seen some teachers like, no Spanish, and they yell and they like scream and they get mad. So, I mean, especially with children and even adults. I mean, we have to be like friends, right? We have to be like, come on, relax. I mean, sometimes it's okay. I mean, they have to rely on Spanish on their L1, but we have to move on, right? So we have the receptive language. What is receptive language? It's how well children understand what others say to them in conversations. I mean, when they are like speaking and interacting between them, are they able to understand each other? So that's receptive language, right? And listening comprehension. That's the ability to understand and connect to stories that are read to them or songs that are sung together, like we said before. So we have to be creative with the listening comprehension. How can we make activities in order to engage our students? How can they be connected? I know like some of you struggle, like you said, oh, come on, because I have to follow the book and maybe my principal is going to tell me something because I'm not using the book. Well, try to use the book, but also remember that all the materials that you have, right? You have to be very creative. Sometimes you can reorder the steps of the book, right? Especially with our books that we have in SM, right? You can work from here to here, and then you can go maybe maybe you start from A to C, and now you say no, I will start from C to A, right? But try to like understand how can you use it. And unusual vocabulary. Unusual vocabulary are rare words that are not typical used in daily conversation, right? Conversations. Sorry. This is vocabulary development in young children has focused on adult use of rare words. We call it semantic support, right? So they, they listen to us, and we as an adults, we support their like trying to like using those words, right? Let me give you an example. One day I was with my older daughter, and I was in the university. She came with me. I was studying my first degree, and I was talking that there was a teacher who was an investigator, right? An investigador. So for my daughter, it was like investigadora. I mean, it was like 7 syllables. I'm sorry, six. I'm sorry, 6 syllables. So for her, it was like, whoa, come on, it's a huge word, right? She was like 2, 3 years old. I don't remember. So she was like, wow, 6 syllables in a word. How? And she was like, how can I say that word? And I was like, what word? The one that you said. And I was trying to repeat all the words that I was saying until she got the investigador. She was like so frustrated, right? She was like, how can I? And then I tried to pronounce it with her, and then I was like syllable by syllable, and she was like, oh, investigadora, right? And she was like, oh, I got it, right? So that's the idea with unusual vocabulary. Try to like include it in your classes. Like for example, the last one says high level vocabulary only comes from hearing high level of words. I mean, how can you expect that your students use another kind of vocabulary, a rich vocabulary, instead of saying, oh, this is pretty. No, no, I mean, she's so beautiful. Look her amazing eyes. Wow, what a hair. I mean, she's like, I don't know, like blonde hair, right? And oh, she's curly with brown eyes, big eyes, right? So try to use those words that probably they're not like this one, like Estelas, right? But try to use that kind of vocabulary that goes beyond the 3 syllables. because I know that for our students, when we try to count the syllables, and you will see that the majority of the books are like trying to use maximum 3 or 4, right? So why not using like 5 or 6 or 7 syllables, right? And what about diphthongs? And what about this one, right? So try to use unusual vocabulary for them so you can enrich. And this is not only for English teachers, this is also for Spanish teachers, right? So in that way, our students, they're going to increase the level of vocabulary that they will use. Okay, so any comments right here?
I'm going to post some questions because we had several questions.
Yes. Yes, Leonardo, right? The most common expressive language. Sure, they have to feel comfortable, says Anonymous. Erica says, for me, that's the start for the real, confident and learn with fun. Very good. Is someone here from another country, Peru, Colombia? Is it different or the same with you? Right? How about using infographics to teach grammar? Is that recommended? Yes, you can use that. I mean, you can use whatever you want. My main, I remember that when I was back in the university, I said we have to commit mistakes. It's okay to commit mistakes while we're teaching. So if it's correct for them while they are learning, I mean, we're not doctors, okay? So if you made a mistake, someone died, right? But in this case, I mean, yes, if you commit a mistake that is longer, yes. But I mean, like, why don't try? What about instead of teaching like that way, why don't you teach like with infographics or with videos or with posters? Or for example, the other class I have with my students, and they have to create an instruction for a machine. So I said, okay, we're not going to write, okay, because I work in public schools. So imagine that I have 3 hours per week, and sometimes it's not 3 hours, right? Because it's 50 minutes class, and I have to take attendance, check homework, explain the assignments, check students, don't jump, hey, whatever, blah, 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 blah. So sometimes I have like 1 hour and a half, right? 2 hours, if I'm lucky. So I have to take into consideration that the timing, right? So if you have any ideas, like how can I use it with my students? So probably every Friday, my students have to go to practice basketball or I don't know any other thing that you have to do for the school. You know, like in here in Mexico, every Monday we have Honores a la Bandera, and sometimes you say, "Come on, yeah, I have this class," and every time I have Honores a la Bandera, and I just have like 1 hour per week. So what I do is like try to take advantage of what I have, right? So using infographics, using blogs. I mean, that's why this is when technology help to to complete everything that you have there, right? I mean, if you're not very technological, like why don't start like using those kind of like apps that you can so you can complete your classes. Using a glossary is a good tool to increase their vocabulary. Yes, yes. I use them with my students, especially for example, I teach in for first graders. I use vocabulary from Ecuador. Eh? Hi to Ecuador. Best wishes for you guys. Thanks a lot for the information. I will stay with the idea about mistakes. Yes, Erika. Encouraging your child to read and view a variety of texts, such as newspapers, novels, comics. Yes. Also, what I recommend you, I don't know if you have the same story like me. When I was a child, my first teacher was my mom, right? And she taught me how to speak and how to count. And when I try to remember all of the games that she did with me and try to apply with my students, I mean, it works sometimes. I mean, not a punishment, obviously, but try For example, my mother, she used to. I had problems with speaking because when I was reading, I mean, I was like because I couldn't. I was really shy when I was like a child. So we had a game. She called it reading the news. So because my name is Abraham, so my name is due to Abraham Lincoln and Abraham Saludowski. Maybe you don't know who is he, but he was a journalist, very famous here in Mexico, like 30 years ago, 40 years ago. So uh, she she was like, "Oh, you're Abraham Sabludowski, right?" So she gave me a newspaper, and I started to read the newspaper. And she's like, "Again, one more time. I mean, the same story, like one more time, and again, and again, and again." But as we were playing, like I was like a TV presenter, it was a different way, right? Majal Ecuador, very good. Comic Science, yes, very good. From Playa del Carmen, oh, beautiful. Very good. Congratulations. Excellent workshop. Thank you very much. Okay, let's continue because we have less time and we have to finish with our topic. Okay, the last one, obviously, I told you I was like looking for information from the Eastern Connecticut University, but I have to also I did my research on our base, right, the University of Dayton. So I found a thesis. I suggest you to look for on the internet. I will give you my references at the end. So I found this thesis, and it was like very helpful because he was like looking for instructions that they were effective in the state of Ohio, because at that time they have um, a rule or a law that says a student has to know how to read, right? And if he reached the third grade, I think, and if he couldn't understand how to read or how to comprehend the text, he has to go back, right? He has to stay in the third grade on probably going back, right? It was like strong issue, right? Like for example, that we have, I don't know if in Ecuador, in other countries, but for example, in Mexico, we have a rule now, uh, that it was like first graders in elementary schools, they cannot fail. I mean, they all pass. And the majority of the teachers were like, come on. So everybody can pass, right? And during the last government, we had like kind of like a rule that all of them passed, right? But we were wrong. I mean, nobody read the law, right? So they said, only, I mean, they were talking about only the first graders. Why? Because sometimes they come from communities that they didn't have the chance to have kindergarten, right? So for some places here in Mexico, we have this issue that first grade of elementary school was the first stage of a formal education for them. So if you fail them, what happened? You will see that they won't come to school anymore, right? Like, come on, I failed first grade. So that's why they said, no, come on, we have to let them pass, but that doesn't mean I have to let them pass freely. Like, come on, you can pass. You couldn't understand anything, you can pass. No, no. You have to like creating like a profile of each one of our students. So what are the strengths and the weakness? So the next teacher on the second grade who can focus on the on that weakness in order to help them to foster them, right? Okay, let's continue. So in his thesis, he had these references, which I'm going to share with you, right? It says Pardo 2004 says comprehension is the true meaning of reading, because without it, all a reader is doing is decoding words, right? What's your opinion about it? Please put in the chat, right? So comprehension is the true meaning of reading, right? I mean, and we're not talking about English and Spanish. We're talking about physics. We're talking about history. We're talking about, I don't know, like biology or natural science or whatever subject you're talking about, right? Like, are they comprehending everything, right? Dell 2014 says assessments require students to understand that they must be able to read and write about the other subjects, like we said before, right? So as we have here in Mexico, now we're working, especially on books, if you can see it, we have a connection. So sometimes my class in this month, I'm going to see. Let me check one thing. They have to sell something, right? They have to create a product, a catalog. So sometimes if I look over, right, I can see that in another class they have the same task, and in another subject they have the same, like something similar. So why
Abraham,
don't we
espera un
use?
poco.
Yes.
Creo que alguien finalizó o se finalizó el evento en vivo.
Ay, sí, estoy viendo que se acabó. El live event. ¿Todos los demás están conectados? ¿O se canceló?
No, déjame preguntar.
Ajá. Porque aquí me dice que está todavía live. Por un lado.
Ok, vamos a ver, espérame, vamos a volver a transmitir.
Sí.
Sí, seguimos en vivo. Please continue.
Okay. Thank you. Mildred from Puerto Rico. Okay.
Sorry for the interruption. We're not alive.
Thank you. Sorry. Okay. So I was telling you, like decoding, right? Allington says the notion that reading is only a school activity needs to be broken, right? Because parents, especially, they believe this is something that it's only for an activity for school, right? And it is not. It says reading needs to take place outside of school, which is difficult because schools create more students who can read than students who do read. What is that? I mean, we create students that they can read, but they don't read. For example, I remember when I was in the secondary, one of my teachers asked us, he told us, you have to bring a newspaper, the regular newspaper that your father read, right? Read. And I remember one of my classmates was like, but my father doesn't read newspapers. I mean, he doesn't like to read. And I was like, in my head, I was like, I can tell. So that's the idea. I mean, we have to be models for as not only as teachers, so as a parents, and we have to ask our the parents of our children, like, come on, you have to give them like 10 minutes of reading with your children, right? Probably at the end at night, reading a story. I mean, like there are tons of stories here in on your cell phones, right? On internet, we have tons of bedtime stories, and make time. Maybe you're so busy, but yes, you can have time, especially because I work with in the public sector. So if you think that in private schools you have problems, believe me, in public we have sometimes children that they are like alone, right? They're like a plant, right? Like living by themselves. Very good. And Tompkins says, without having an exposure to vocabulary early on, children will struggle in their later grades to have a complete understanding of more complex sentences. So I don't know if it does make sense for you, right? Like some of the comments that says, how can I use it? How can I do it? Like do it. Don't worry. If you made a mistake, if this class didn't uh, didn't achieve the goals that you have, don't worry. I mean, try again. And sometimes you have like a beautiful class, you design it. In one class, poof, everybody was like playing, clapping, and they were like, oh, like enjoying. And Like, and then you go to another class and it's a total fail. And then you feel frustrated. I mean, you don't have to feel frustrated. It's a different classroom and it's a different environment. Yes, they're like the same child, the same children, the same age, but they don't have them from the same background. So expect that, right? So we have to enrich the environment, especially when we have the students with in our classrooms, right? And Edwards at the end says, when parents are involved, children's achievement increase. So do you agree or not, right? So if we involve parents, I mean, I can tell. For example, every month that I have reunion with the parents, I have the same issue. I don't know if you have the same issue in another parts of this country or in another countries. Like the best students, I'm sorry, the best students' parents, yes, they're like always coming to the meetings, parents meeting. So I'm like, oh, come on, I want to talk with these guys, right? With the children that I have, like they have problems, but unfortunately we have this problem, right? That these parents they don't come to school, and we have no connection there, right? I know, but I'm not saying it's impossible. We can do it. We can do something, right? Uh, and then we have the effective teacher success, which uh, they get together with 8, right? According to Gail Tompkins, it says 1, effective teachers understand how children learn. So we have to understand how our children learn. Remember, like from the beginning of the year of the school year, we have this diagnostic test. So we have to understand like how our children in this classroom is learning, right? What are the channels they use, right? Number 2, effective teachers support the children's use of the 4 Queen systems, phonological, syntax, all the ones that we have seen, right? 3, effective teachers create a community of learners, right? So we have to create a community, like a safe space. I know sometimes we have to hurry and we come from one class to another one, right? I mean, if you're like an elementary and you have your children the whole day, the same class, it's okay, right? But if you're like running from classroom to another classroom, I mean, no matter if you're coming from another class that it was like a total mess and they were like not paying attention, you have to clean yourself and then you have to enter with that, like create that community, right? Create that safe environment. The number 4 says effective teachers adopt a balanced approach to instruction. So we have to uh, work with a balanced approach. They said, for example, sometimes we have to combine different ways to teach. For example, maybe you have a class that they are very active, so you use a lot of TPR. But sometimes these guys are like kind of like genius and they like structures, and so maybe you set this class like in a little bit of tasks, but without forgetting that they have to play, right? So you have to be very creative. And the number 5 says effective teachers scaffold children's reading and writing, right? So the idea is that you create like stages. I mean, uh, I don't want to roast teachers, but I have seen some teachers that they like from the beginning, like a diagnostic test. They have to write an essay. Like, come on, they're in secondary. I mean, they couldn't do it in Spanish. How can they do it in English, right? So you have to be like in a step, right? Like you have to scaffold, and you're working with elementary or kindergarten kids. Like, can they recognize the words? Can they recognize the who was the main character of the story? Can they recognize verbs? Can they recognize colors? Can they recognize sounds? Right. So you have to start from that beginning, right? And little by little, right? And like a cake. I mean, you don't come with a cake right away in the class, right? You have to bring the materials and then probably you're starting with the flour, and then you're starting with the whipped cream or something, right? So you have to create your own steps. At the end, you have, in order to have like uh, a product. That's why we call it here in Mexico, we'll call it secuencia educativa, right? Like you start here, and then once you have this, okay, the next class, they're gonna do something different. But the idea is at the end of the class or at the end of the week, you have like a connection with all of them, right? Says number 6, effective teachers organize for literacy instruction. So it means the recommendation for them is you have to prepare for all the whole year. I mean, well, this is United States, but maybe you can write like at the beginning of the year you have like the topics that you're going to see, and you can realize what kind of material you're going to need, right? What are the needs that they have, my students? I mean, do they feel connected with, I don't know, talking about debates or talking about describing a machine? So why not describing another thing, right? I mean, as long as you're using the vocabulary, the grammar that is requested, right, by the curricula. Number 7, effective teachers differentiate instruction, right? So says not two children learn in the exact same way, which is why best practice in any early childhood, right? So no student is the same with the other one, right? So we have to differentiate instructions. Maybe you see that some of the students are like answering very fast. And what can I do? I mean, I have some students they finish like really fast, and the other ones that they finish like at the end. Sometimes they couldn't finish. So you have to make like for probably if you have like advanced students, you create backup activities. So in order to keep them busy. But if they like, ah, come on, right? Like, how can I have to make 6 exercises and the other ones just did like 2? So probably like they can help you out or they can create another activity. I don't know. It's up to you. And the last one is effective teachers link instruction and assessment. It means like assessment should be a daily, right? An ongoing process. But results can come from tests, right? So we have to like instructions and the assessment has to have a connection, right? So if my idea is that my students are able to do this, so the instructions are like enough for them, I really help them, or I'm just like messing around, right? Okay. Um, okay. So according to Jamie, right? Dr. Jamie, sorry. So literacy instructional methods, right? And they come up with these instructional methods. They said read aloud, right? So read aloud is when the teachers gathers the students together, choose a specific test, catered towards a literacy lesson or geared toward other content, and actively engage the students, right, while reading, and also try to like find the teachable moments, right? Find those moments that are like really rich, that you can like introduce something, right? About the grammar, about something, right? Oh, did you see that? What happened? Are the verbs in kind of different, right? You see the S? Why? I mean, I see runs and here says run. What is the difference, right? So you can like start creating like the curiosity in your students, right? And the other one says share reading, right? Obviously, this is like for another levels. So this is like it's an important in assisting the children in becoming more independent readers. Share reading is done with the teacher and student where the responsibility for the reading comes from both parties, right? I mean, when you and your student, you have like a certain level and you can share reading, right? Uh, for example, try to use them like go out of the classroom and take all of your students and read like lay down on the grass and read comfortable, right? Enough. And the next one is guided reading. Says guided reading is when the teacher arranges the student in groups of 3 to 5 by their instructional level in reading, and the teacher leads children in working their way through a text, right? So here you like giving ideas, you're helping them out, but you like kind of like giving them that independence, right? Like maybe you set a task. So while you're reading, you have to do this, and then you have to underline all of the vocabulary that you couldn't understand, or you could circle all the words that you found that they have like ending with ing, or they have more than 3 syllables, etc., right? Depending on the depends on the topic or the grammar that you're seeing. And the next one says independent reading. Says the next method in literacy instruction is independent reading. This is also a lower level of teacher involvement, but it still serves a genuine purpose. Says teacher wants children to practice strategy they've already introduced, right? Like slowly you like introducing the responsibility, like, okay, now it's your turn. I mean, now tell me what you're capable of, right? And even with small children, I mean, sometimes you perhaps think that you like they couldn't, they're like in kindergarten, but they can create something, right? Like for example, and they can underline, they can use colors, right? Like identify this, right? And you can put them on your whiteboard, blackboard, and then you can your students can identify something, a pattern. So you will see that they could uh, do something more with that, right? And the next one says interactive writing, says it's similar to share reading. Interactive writing is a step in the process of scaffolding in order to assist children to the next step, right? So it means like you can set students in groups, right? So they can help each other in order to like interact with others, right? They have to create something, but they have like an interaction now, right? They can write maybe a letter, or they can realize how to describe uh, opinions, or they can describe emotions, right? Like depends on the level of what you're teaching. And the last one says independent writing. Obviously, independent writing is the when a child has moved through all of the steps of the writing process and is able to complete without assistance of the teacher, right? This is like our dream, right? But you may say, what about if I'm working with elementary or preschool? Well, try to like, maybe they can do drawings, they can create materials about the writing, right? Like for example, okay, now create the story, okay? So maybe yeah, they can draw like the characters of the or scenes from the story, and then they have to stick them on a wall chart, so they have to follow the story, right? Or maybe you create them or you print them before, right? So your students, instead of like writing, they can like in their own independence, like trying to recreate the story. That's the idea of independent writing. So, any final comments?
Okay, Abraham, we have time for a couple of questions.
Yes.
There is one that is very interesting from Norma Medina. She said, how can I teach pronunciation with not listening at all? Because sometimes technology in my school doesn't work.
Okay, how can I teach
Pronunciation
pronunciation?
with no listening features? Because sometimes technology, specifically CD players, don't work in my
Yes.
school.
Yes, it happens to me like when I was like starting teaching, and I was like working in well in a poor school that it has like not enough material. So, and I remember at that time I didn't have any any technology at all. So I have only my smartphone, which was like the only thing that I have. So, for example, what I use is, for example, if I have problems, if I need to use the audios, I recommend you like change to the format of MP3s and probably bring them in your cell phone, and then try to bring like cables or something. Or if that doesn't work, I mean, you have to. This is when you're like lesson planning. This is really important, thinking about your possible problems. So in this case, in these scenarios, I mean, think about all the possible problems that you could have due to technology, because I know sometimes technology is not our best friend. Sometimes it's our worst enemy. So you have to create probably your own materials, like, or maybe you read them, or maybe make them to read, or maybe interact reading, or maybe using gigs of reading. So in order like to teach pronunciation, but remember in this case, if you're like reading aloud, remember you are the model. So you have to take that into consideration. Is there any other?
Yeah, probably the last question says from Anonymous, how can I get my students to speak only English in class? Since they are very small, they little kids. I try to use English all the time, but they can hardly speak. So the question is, how can I get my students to speak only English in class?
Start with the basics, the most basic. I mean, like someone says, all those like basic words that we use in the classroom, like greetings, permissions. Start with that, right? As soon as you start with that, I mean, doesn't matter if the pronunciation is like, teacher, may go to the borro, may go to the barro, right? I mean, don't worry. I mean, they have their own effort, so praise that, and I mean, involve them, right? Like little by little. Sometimes, for example, nowadays, for example, in our secondary, our students are like finishing the last grade on secondary. I'm talking about the school with almost 1,000 students in one shift. So now I'm not saying the whole of the students, but the majority of the students now they are interacting. How? I mean, try to use like videos, songs. Like songs are like, especially for kindergarten, it's like fantastic. Try to use a lot of songs, like really, really basic songs. And sometimes our books, especially, have like uh, good enough materials. But if you don't find the ones that you're looking for, go Google it on YouTube. Like, you will find good materials on the internet.
We have a comment, and I think it will be a very good introduction for your next workshop on this using these technological tools on the next session you're gonna have.
Yes.
It says, I suggest to use smartphones
Yes.
to teach pronunciation. So can you tell us something about your next workshop?
Yes. Yes. Thank you, Abdel. Yes, actually, we're gonna have a next workshop. If you're like, I hope you can join us. And the next workshop, we're gonna see like how we can take advantage of cell phones in our classes. I'm working on that. Like, how can I use them with kindergarten, elementary school, secondary, high school, and university also as well, right? How can we use and take advantages of not only smartphones, also iPads or tablets, right, into the classrooms? How can we integrate them, but I mean, not the whole class be related with the technology, because especially with youngsters, I mean, like as from secondary, from kindergarten to secondary, I mean, it's kind of hard, like using cell phones, because they're not used to use them as an academic tool, as for educational purposes. So it's difficult. I'm not saying it's easy. I mean, it took for me years, and sometimes it happens. I mean, I commit mistakes, right? But the idea of the next workshop is how to use the cell phones, and sometimes we have tons of apps that are really richful, so you can use them in order to teach pronunciation. We have tons of apps that help you with phonology, and they recognize it, and they have games, and etc. So yes, it's not difficult. I mean, cell phones are really good tool, but we have to be aware that it's like a knife, right? So if you're not using it wisely, you can have problems. We're gonna see it in the next workshop. I hope you like it.
Thank you, Abraham. So, well, we heading up to our closure for today's session. I'm really sorry about the lapses we have with technology. A couple of announcements. Please answer the survey. It's on the chat box. Also, it's on the screen. So feel free to use the QR reader or the link that is below. For us, it's very important you complete the survey to improve every day. So please do it. And we have several questions on the chat box. Abraham will be able to read many of them, and probably he will include some of the questions for the next workshop. And talking about that, remember that tomorrow we won't have any workshop. Tomorrow is Friday, so tomorrow we don't have any. But since you are being so kind with us, to us, and you are being connected the whole week and the previous week, and because you requested, we're gonna start with a new series of workshops starting next Monday. So we're gonna have workshop on Monday, on Tuesday, on Wednesday, and then the week after. So please stay tuned on social media, on SM, Grupo SM web pages, on Facebook, also for University of Dayton Publishing. We are going to talk about very interesting topics. One is about smartphones in the classroom, or I mean, tablets, as Aram explained. Another one is going to be about how to keep passion alive as teachers, how to keep magic alive. Experiential learning also is going to be presented. So we're going to have different topics. So please tell everyone, your colleagues, to join us next week for the next workshops, also in Spanish and both in English. So one more time, Abraham, thank you for sharing this very interesting information. And for the rest of you out there, thank you for joining us today. Please be safe. We know we are on difficult times, but I mean, together we can continue learning, no aprendiendo desde casa, as we said in SM. Thank you, Abraham. Thank you, everyone. Stay tuned for next week. Have a nice day and be safe.
Bye.
Bye.